Dinosaur. Dinosaur man. Where'd he come from? 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 Dinosaur man.
Hello and welcome to Dinosaur Man News and Reviews. I'm Andy Hughes. I'm here with the intrepid explorer Alex Hudson.
This is not the Uncharted movie that has been either pushed back or moved up a week, I think.
Are you not the Nathan
So it means
Drake
it's
of
still
this
coming out never, but it's just coming out a week earlier or later than never.
Are you not the Nathan Drake of this podcast?
I would say no.
So fun thing about the Uncharted movie. Did you hear the news that Tom Holland has already said he went too hard? Like, he's already disappointed with his performance in it because he went in it too much.
Hey, I'm not going to be disappointed because I ain't seeing that movie anyway. It's never coming out, so it doesn't matter.
It's going to be so fun.
Well, it will be so fun, and I'm glad that you enjoy it when it will come out.
I don't know whether I want to see it.
Well, my big worry is you've obviously got 3 of the games, maybe 4 of the games still unplayed.
Yeah. I've played
In fact,
one.
you haven't. Have you finished one?
I finished number 1.
Okay.
Because
I remember you got to one bit and you said you didn't like it because it was too cover shootery.
That happens a lot of the game. But the very end boss, it's just a man with a gun.
Uh-huh.
You have
Didn't mean to yawn into the mic there, sorry.
You have to jump between cover and then hit a button press in time. And I failed like 20 times. And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever beat this guy. It's very easy what you're asking me to do.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm ever going to do it. And I might just abandon it.
It's interesting that I think a lot of video games, but let's say particularly with reference to Uncharted, seems to be like a gladiator thing. The TV show Gladiators.
Okay.
Like, it feels like you've got to dodge out of here and then hit a button. And then you've got to get back before Wolf catches you.
I thought you meant like it's because he takes a lot of pain, like he gets shot a lot.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing about Uncharted...
Okay, please tell me the interesting thing about Uncharted.
Nobody really cares about this, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Okay, this is a 12 or 15-year-old game series at this point.
But so people...
Hot take coming up.
So Nathan Drake gets shot a lot in that game, right?
Spoiler alert.
But they've confirmed that he actually never gets shot. His health bar is his luck meter, and actually, like, one shot would kill him.
Jesus.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just like when he gets shot and when you get hit and when you're basically getting killed, pretty much, it's basically your luck running out until that fatal shot.
Yeah.
Which I think is a much more interesting way to look at it than to go, oh, this guy's a bullet sponge.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a luck meter.
That's how they explained it, yeah. It
So-
looks a lot like a health bar.
Can you heal yourself on that game?
You heal over time. So it's one of those
Okay,
where if
so
you stand still, it kind of your health bar builds back up.
So everyone's luck is rechargeable, is that what they're saying?
Yeah.
Or that just his is? If a regular person try...
I
Okay,
have
so
no
is
luck
he
to
holding
begin
a
with.
horseshoe during the entirety of the game?
And a rabbit's foot.
What's the other thing?
Oh, he doesn't walk under any ladders. He's specific about that. And he hops when he goes over 3 cracks.
I feel like I'm thinking about...
3 drains. 3 drains, isn't it?
What? 3 drains?
Yeah, step on 3 consecutive drains is bad luck.
Okay.
There used to be somebody we went to university with, right? Who...
You can name and shame if you want to.
No, it's fine.
Alright, well, I demand you tell me off pod because I'm now interested.
Believed in that so much
Yeah.
that we'd be walking down the street and
Oh, I figure I know who it is.
she'd stand on 3 drains.
Oh, no, I don't.
And then she'd spin in 3 circles afterwards to reverse the look. And then would carry on walking. But, like, she never avoided the drains. She just always knew that she'd stepped on them. So regularly we'd walk and she'd just start spinning in a circle.
Are we close friends with her?
No, we got on from at uni. We don't speak to them now.
Okay. She's a fucking moron. Do you think she listens?
Probably not.
I mean, look, superstitions are fine.
Yep.
You heard it here first, folks.
What's your biggest
Superstitions
superstition?
are fine. My biggest superstition? No, I don't really have any. I don't do anything because I think it gives me good luck or anything.
But do you have any kind of things that are habitual now that, like, when you go to do something, you have to do something in advance of it because it's just something that you do? If that makes sense?
Yeah, like when I go to bed, I cry before I go in, yeah.
Just so you know that you'll have a good night's sleep.
Well, that's not the
Or the
reason.
demons won't get you.
That's not the reason I do it. I think the reason I do it is sadness.
It is the sad out, so the demons can't get you.
Well, it means I'm a better night's sleep ahead if I'm lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Tears weigh heavier than blood.
That sounds like an amazing album title.
Tears are heavier than blood.
Evanescence definitely would have released that as an
What is
album.
it? Blood is thicker than water, isn't it? Because that's about basically family is better than water.
Yeah, I had...
But family can't hydrate you.
At uni, I wrote a script, and I wrote all the script, and I hadn't got a title, and I'm pretty sure the title of it in the end was Blood is Thicker. And literally, it's not because it was a good title, it's literally because I had to hand it in and went, I haven't got a title, and this is about family.
Yeah, and I know what you're thinking, you millennials. We don't mean THICC. We mean...
No, we don't. That's exactly what I meant. Yeah, I invented thick.
Blood has a bigger butt than water.
I also invented Robin Thicke. But yeah. So that's something that I did.
Okay.
But this is a podcast where we don't talk about university.
We don't talk about superstition. We don't talk about university.
We talk about... No. We are the only podcast in the world that talks news and reviews. This week, we're going to focus...
100% right.
This week, we're going to focus on movie news and reviews because I think that's probably for this week, maybe.
For just this week, though.
Yeah.
You promised this is a 1-week excursion into the movie news.
Exactly. And as the only podcast that talks movie news and reviews, we will be reviewing...
Lots of stuff. We got a lot. Okay, so Godzilla vs. Kong is the big one. That's what they're calling it. It's called Godzilla vs. Kong, the big one. We have also got The Night, we've got Slaxx, we've got Violation, we have Assassins, we have a couple more as well, Wrong Turn.
I'm pretty sure you've added another 2 since the last time you told me you'd watch stuff.
Wrong
Despite
Turn.
saying, I'm not going to watch any more.
You're going to talk about Harley Quinn TV series, you're going to talk about Invincible. I think that's everything. Yeah, you'll see it in the title of the episode, don't worry guys. If there's anything you missed there...
I guarantee they're not all going to fit in the title.
They will. The title is... I think the title is unlimited. I think. There was one week where I just gave up on writing them. I just put, and more. But that was more out of laziness than it was out of a limitation by a website. Should we do news?
Yes.
The Trench is cancelled.
So we're now going into movie TV news, yeah?
They've listened to the show before.
Is the Trench a
They've
video?
listened to the show before. So this is actually the only article that I didn't bring up ahead of time, so I should probably have done that.
So The Trench is the James Wan horror movie based off the creatures in Aquaman.
Yeah, James Wan was producing or exec producing a horror-themed spin-off of Aquaman called The Trench, based on the creatures from it, which has been cancelled along with Ava DuVernay's New Gods. As part of our DC slate, some legacy development titles, including New Gods and The Trench, will not be moving forward, Warner Brothers and DC said in a statement. We thank our partners Ava DuVernay, Tom King, James Wan and Peter Safran for their time and collaboration during this process, and we look forward to our continued partnership with them on other DC stories. The projects will remain in their skillful hands if they were to move forward in the future. DuVernay is currently working on a DC series called Naomi, for the CW, and obviously James Wan is currently in development of Aquaman 2, so there are projects that they're still involved in currently.
So I think if I remember rightly, you were never excited for The Trench.
No, I thought it was a terrible idea.
And I think it was one of those things of just being like, oh, Aquaman has just made so much money, how do we...
Yeah, there was a week where they decided there was going to be 3 spin-off movies from Aquaman, and then they cancelled 2 of them within 2 weeks, and then they left The Trench as the only one they actually want to go with.
And also, a horror-based superhero property, I think we spoke about before, saying it would be interesting to see somebody do that properly. Mm-hmm. Like, the New Mutants potentially looked like it potentially could do that, and then never did. Mm-hmm. So could a horror-based superhero movie work? And James Wan's probably the person to give that money to. He knows how to make blockbuster horror. But also, it does seem like an idea where I'm like, yeah, but what can you actually do with that? Yeah. The DuVernay New Gods one's interesting, because I I hadn't heard much about that. Since it was
that was the one that was much further down the line, because that one had actually been written and about to go into production this year, whereas The Trench was always considered by Warner Brothers as being an extraneous sequel, an extraneous spin-off that didn't have any need to come out.
So, is there any kind of confirmation on the rumours I read on Twitter, the hotbed of news, like the place that you can only go for substantiated fact, that the reason New Gods was cancelled was because Darkseid was supposed to appear in it, and they couldn't have that being in that, and also Zack Snyder's Justice League because of a conflict of films.
Well, here's the
two Jokers in like 2 years.
Here's the actual thing: is that New Gods, which would have been a sprawling tale, was complicated by the fact that its villain Darkseid has just appeared as a major foil in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and there was a desire to have space between the latter and any new appearances. So, except for the Batman, which is set in an alternate Earth known to geeks as Earth 2, DC is plotting all of its films and shows to share the same universe still. Key to setting up its new status quo will be The Flash in November 2022. Yeah, right. Which will tackle the multiverse and is said to lend clarity to the future of the Justice League with multiple Batmen as well as Supergirl appearing. Other projects due on the slate are Black Adam in 2022, Shazam! Fury of the Gods 2023, as well as Warner's Blue Beetle, Batgirl, Supergirl, Green Lantern Corps, and Static Shock, which are all currently on there. Zatanna and a third Wonder Woman are also in development.
So Zatanna is potentially being done by Emerald Fennell.
And the upcoming Superman film we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which J.J. Abrams is producing. But all of those are due to exist in the same universe,
which is
whereas the Batman stands alone as a alternate thing.
Which is a shame, because I think we spoke before about saying like maybe DC should just have this thing where each property is separate and they have them all in their own kind of world doing their own thing. But we'll see how that works out.
But they're still wanting to make as much money as possible, and by doing crossovers, that's going to give them the possibility of doing that. They're not going to be able to do crossovers if they all exist in different universes, are they?
That's why you got The Flash. His movies are always
exactly.
I'm going to pull this guy from here and this guy from here.
So The Flash can link them all together, but remember, The Flash is the first movie of these. The first of these new slate of movies. Well, and then all the others are going to be retconned to fit into whatever happens in The Flash when it doesn't come out.
Yeah.
Fucking dumb fucking company. All right. What else have we got?
Mr. Warner Brothers, it's so nice to see you here.
He's not welcome in this house. So, Disney have announced that Cruella and Black Widow will be simultaneously in theaters and on Disney Plus with Premier Access. Which is the $30 option, which is a purchase extra for subscribers. So that's going to be in most Disney Plus markets on Friday, May 28th for Cruella, and Friday, July 9th for Black Widow. It's also shifted a bunch of release dates for other films as part of that move. So Raya and the Last Dragon was the last film that they did in this fashion, which had a box office of 23.4 million in the first 3 weekends. I think that's just domestic, but I don't know. And yeah, so in the morning's press release, they declared that movie was a success for them without ever backing the claim up with numbers, but no one's actually releasing any figures officially for any streaming stuff at the moment. Cinemark refused to play Raya given Disney's deal with them. So there may have been some kind of depressed box office because of that, I guess. But my best guess is that, I mean, Cruella's a film where I feel like there's probably still an audience for it, and we might be completely out of touch with what that film is trying to do. So I'm not going to sort of weigh in too much on that. Black Widow's the more interesting example because obviously it's a proper MCU property, and
sorry,
sorry, I've just been poisoned by Warner Brother.
They got you. They heard what you were saying.
Jesus.
Get out of here, Warner
Yeah,
Brothers.
so it's more of an interesting one there, because that's one where you feel like you've got a relative understanding of how well that should do. It's slightly tempered because it's so different to certainly the recent Marvel movies in terms of what it's trying to do.
Yeah, I suppose the interesting thing about this, always has been, is whether one of these kind of films would go to a premiere on demand, because I think it's what they have been trying to avoid for so long since they started doing these. The reason that I think all the Marvel stuff got pushed back is because they didn't really want to do it, because, you know, Marvel movies make close to $1 billion every time. They make these huge amounts of money. Do you lose a lot? And I think this is a little bit of them going, well, we've started that Marvel machine going when we started these Disney Plus shows. There is a timeline we have to follow. It has to come out at some point, so we'll put it out. But also, is there actually an opportunity because of what we've seen from Raya and what we saw from, what was the other one they did? Mulan. Like, are we seeing enough of a figure and enough of a number here to go, actually, we're still going to make money. It's not as much, but we'll still make enough money to justify it. Yeah,
the big differential here is that with Disney Plus Premier Access, or whatever they call it, it's 100% of the revenue of that they're keeping. So that's obviously more attractive to the studio, as it basically means that they can get that 100. So, you know, you sell 1 million Premier Access things to Cruella, you get $30 million back. Rather than if you sell 1 million tickets for Cruella, you're getting maybe 15 million back. So it kind of feels like for them, for the current time, until things are back open in the same way, until you've got 100% capacity attendance in theatres, it makes it probably very difficult to argue the point that, oh, well, a wide cinematic release, exclusive cinematic release is the best way forward. Because actually, it probably is a case that there is more money to be made by doing Disney Plus over a solely theatrical release. And this is why, obviously, they've come into a bit of criticism for this, because theatre chains are saying, well, you know, we're at a time where we're starting to reopen, and yet we're being told that these big things are being taken away from us. It's not just them. Warner Brothers have been at it as well. Obviously, that's well documented. Paramount have also got this move to Paramount Plus that's going to be happening 45 days after initial release. So it does feel like there is going to be a sea change for at least the next couple of years, where I think we're going to see these studios that do have streaming services that they've got attached to them in one form or another, they can then utilize those in a way that generates the maximum possible revenue for them. Warner's is slightly different at the moment, because HBO Max, they're not charging an extra fee, as far as I know, for any of the ones that have been announced as day and date for them. So I'm kind of intrigued by that, because I don't know if that's just going to be a case of, okay, for this year we're going to release all of these and you're not going to have to pay any extra for them, but then maybe going forward from this year they would instigate some kind of premium service. So maybe that's more a case of just getting subscribers in the door. But certainly with Disney, it's not a case of they need the subscribers. They've got a lot of subscribers already to Disney Plus. It's just now a case of they're probably looking at this and going, you know, these are, okay, Cruella's not as expensive a movie, I'm presuming, but certainly Black Widow is an expensive movie.
Yeah.
We want to try and get back as much as possible, and this is our best chance of doing it, unless we were faced with, 4,500 theatres in the US all showing our movie 100% capacity, in which case, that way, it's going to break $1 billion.
Did you see the new Black Widow trailer?
Yeah, I did.
I didn't. Was it any good?
I didn't like it, but then again, look, I'm not going to go and see this movie anyway, because I've got zero interest in the property. But what I found interesting was that the prior I think the prior trailer did a better job of trying to sell it as something different, whereas this just feels so generically Marvel that I just went, oh, well, there is nothing for me here.
Yeah.
And so the more I'm seeing of this movie, the less I'm interested in it. I wasn't going to see it anyway, but this has cemented my fact of like, well, it's not going to get me on board. But I saw it basically because I knew you hadn't.
Well, I decided I'm not
because
going
you're
to.
actually interested in going to see it.
A bit like Godzilla Kong, which we'll talk about later. I watched the first trailer and then didn't watch any of the others because I kind of went, okay, I know what I'm getting now. Like, I like a trailer to get a taste, but I'm trying to watch less trailers now.
Yeah.
Because
it's just difficult now that we're at home all the time. I think there's always this... I think it's harder to avoid them in a way that when we were going to the cinema more regularly, it was a case of I would watch maybe one trailer if I was interested in the thing. Maybe I wouldn't watch anything if I could avoid it. And then now I think it's just been a case of combined with doing the podcast, but also just being at home all the time. It's almost impossible to avoid these things.
They just keep loading up, and when I turn the Xbox on, they're like, hey, here's a trailer.
Just quickly on Disney, Luca, which is coming out in the summer. That will be going in territories where Disney Plus is available. That will be going directly to Disney Plus in the same way that Soul did. So that will be included with subscription. That won't be an additional extra. And it will be getting a cinematic release where Disney Plus is not currently available.
Also, just real briefly, so in the UK and I think maybe US, the Cineworld chain and the group that own it made a deal with Warner Brothers to basically have exclusive rights to show their films for 4 weeks before going on to...
So they've got a similar setup to the one that... Was it Universal struck with someone? Was it Universal and AMC maybe
Regal,
struck?
maybe?
But basically, there's going to be a 45-day period where they will not be able to then put them on premium VOD sites. And they will be in cinemas for that time. So this covers Cineworld, it covers Regal, which is Cineworld's chain in the US, and therefore it also covers Picture House, I guess, because they're also owned by Cineworld. Yeah. I don't know how monumental this news is going to be going forward, but it's, we're at a point now where we are... I think we're just about 40 days away from reopening here in the UK. Certainly that seems to be, unless something drastic is to change, cinemas should be reopening at that point. And Cineworld have definitely come out of this saying, well, we're going to reopen as strongly as we can because we feel like it's important that we do it, mainly because they've had so many financial issues in the last year that I think they need to get this open as a matter of priority now. And they'll be more pissed off than most about the fact that things like Cruella and things because, those are things that would be getting 20 showings a day in big multiplexes. And I think... the independent cinemas that show one of those big blockbusters, sure, they'll suffer, but they don't make their money, their bread and butter is on the stuff that Cineworld aren't showing. Yeah. Cineworld might now have to show some of the stuff they wouldn't normally have shown. Like they did last summer when they reopened because nothing was getting released. And you saw all these small releases get released in 500-600 seater cinemas. And you think, this is not a normal situation. Yeah,
I think it's all going to be very interesting over the next couple of years to see how this time has affected how cinemas work going forwards. What else you got for me?
Netflix they've just basically plonked their dick on the table and said, here's $450 million for Knives Out 2 and 3. And the whole cinema world has gone crazy. Netflix have reportedly agreed a deal to make 2 sequels to Rian Johnson's Knives Out, which came out in 2019.
Which is great news because I love that film.
And I thought it was fine. And Rian Johnson will be continuing to direct that series, along with Daniel Craig reprising his role. So the sequels have both been written already, and apparently were written at the time of the initial release of Knives Out 1. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure he said at that point, didn't he had sequels ready.
But yeah, apparently the deal is worth north of $400 million, making it one of the biggest streamer movie deals in history. So there was a discrete auction that went on between 3 streamers. Apple and Amazon were the other 2 that were involved. And Netflix decided to dump $450 million down on the table. So, they're in a position where they can. To be fair, all 3 companies could.
Yeah.
But I think, particularly with Amazon, they have never necessarily... You saw, I think, Coming to America was about 120 million, and that was a record for them. And I don't think they've ever been in the business of trying to sort of stamp down and say, hey, we've got all this money that we're going to drop on a big thing. They've much preferred, things like Manchester by the Sea, I think, was a Amazon production and things like that. So I think they've found a niche that they're working within, and then they'll occasionally work outside that. But I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, Coming to America would have been released in cinemas by Paramount, whereas whatever. Apple's just a weird one where I don't know if they currently know what their approach is going to be. And it's interesting in that they've been going for 18 months now, just over. And no one really understands what their operating model is, because, like a Greyhound was one they picked up last year.
Cherry.
And they picked that up. They picked up Greyhound for a decent fee, I'm pretty sure. I think it was 60 or 70 million. Cherry may have been always theirs, I think, but I don't know. But it kind of feels like they're one where you're just going, I think they just make a decision on a deal by deal basis. They, they just look at it and go, yeah, we'll take this one. So this Timberlake one, we'll do that.
So you say that the cinematic world went crazy.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So, I mean, the Twitter sphere was abuzz because it's a huge amount for a streamer to drop on a existing property. I mean, it's a huge amount for a streamer to drop on anything, And it's really only Netflix who would be capable of doing something like that, where they just go, well, here's 450 million for 2 films that we, I don't know if that'll affect their subscriber base anywhere near as much as... But then again, it's now a case of, have they now reached the amount of subscribers they need?
Have they got the subscriber base, and therefore now they're just making stuff that the subscribers will keep them there?
Yeah, I think that might be it. Things that can justify them increasing their price, things that can justify, subscribers retaining their subscription. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think the only real challenger to Netflix at the moment, their dominance, is probably Disney Plus in terms of variety that's on there and the amount that people want to see. Like, I'm happy because it means that I'm getting more Knives Out. I like that film. I think I really like Daniel Craig in it. I quite like a murder mystery, and I'm happy to see more of this. So I'm happy. It's not my money that's being spent. Spend it all you want, Netflix.
Sure.
Although technically it probably is my money, as I have Netflix.
So
I own Knives Out, is what I'm saying.
Next thing. What else? Trailers. A lot of trailers this couple of weeks. So, what trailers do we have? Well, Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Space Jam.
Or as we're calling it, Ready Player Basketball. The whole internet is now caught onto this because of that scene.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
This is the sequel to Space Jam from 1996, I want to say.
Yeah, I'd hazard a guess that's probably right. 1996, of course.
Well, I'm never good at that game, so I'm delighted with myself. Which follows the same lines, but instead of Michael Jordan, it's now LeBron James, who basically goes into a digital world and is forced to play a game of basketball against Don Cheadle's King of the Internet or something like that. But is forced to play with the Looney Tunes because they're the losers against a team of basketballers that have probably had their powers stolen by Don Cheadle. It looks much more of the same. It has one scene where Warner Brothers, they love doing this, just go, here are all of our properties, let's put them into one thing.
Yeah, so there was, I'm trying to find it again, but I think they've just sort of, they've kind of squashed it down into just things from these different things.
Yeah.
But there was a breakdown of sort of every single character that appeared in the background of that basketball tournament. I mean, you've got some weird stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like the Droogs from Clockwork Orange are in there. Mama Fratelli from Goonies is in there.
And obviously...
The White Walkers are there.
the Iron Giant crushing stuff, because remember how the Iron Giant didn't want to be used as a weapon, and then every time we see him afterwards, it's just a weapon.
Yeah, Iron Giant. There was,
King
I think,
Kong.
2 different Penguins. There was a Riddler Joker, Jack Nicholson's Joker,
Yeah, so also
Batman,
basically just everything they can.
stuff from Mad Max.
Because people love seeing stuff.
Is this what TV? Is this what culture is now?
Everyone wants something they can pause and go,
Do you remember
oh,
Do you remember from olden days?
Look, there's so-and-so from so-and-so.
Yeah.
People love that.
I mean, look, this...
What's a film if it can't be paused?
Right, so this film was made for you. We know that.
I like this, because I love Space Jam.
Mm-hmm.
Still love Space Jam. I still think it's incredibly fun. I think it's one of the films that takes me right back to childhood, and I remember it first coming out and being obsessed with it. I look at this one and I'm like, A, how many kids do you think still know Looney Tunes?
Hey, they're probably still popular with kids.
Are they?
When was the last time you watched kids' TV? You don't know if they're still on.
Always. Because I like to pause it and go, oh, is that thing from that thing?
Yeah, but how many kids like LeBron James? Millions.
True.
That's your way in.
I did see somebody post.
Do you remember that it wasn't a case of, oh, yeah, everyone loves Bugs Bunny in the 90s. It was everyone loves Michael Jordan.
I did see somebody post.
No one was there for Daffy Duck.
I was there for Tasmanian going, lemony fresh. I saw a tweet that said, something along the lines of the most realistic update to this film is they've put LeBron James in a mansion instead of the two down house that Michael Jordan was in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know that he's got the money.
Yeah.
It could be fun. It did seem quite derivative of the first.
Sorry, what did you expect? Did you expect Space Jam 2: A New Legacy to be like, okay, now they're playing baseball?
I love the fact they're still playing basketball because it's still a sport that I only
don't understand.
What is a sport I only associate with Space Jam?
Yeah. You actually were astounded to find out that it's a sport that exists outside of Space Jam.
I was like, but where are the Monstars? But
yes,
I am probably going to see this. But
of course you will.
But
you're a sucker.
Well, somebody's got to.
I'm sure some people will.
And seeing as
doesn't mean one of us has to.
No, it does.
Not every film has to have one of us see it.
Seeing as you've agreed
We've
to watch...
proven that the last 5 years.
Seeing as you've agreed to watch Spiral from the Book of Sport...
We'll get onto it in just a second.
Because you've said you're definitely watching that, I will take this. It's fine.
Okay. So Spiral from the Book of Saw looks nonsense and I'm not going to see it.
You're definitely seeing it.
It just looks like a Saw movie.
Yeah, when it's from the Book of Saw, but then it is just a Saw movie.
Yeah, I mean...
The face traps on there still?
I really like the term, the Book of Saw. Like it's a testament in the Bible.
It is. It's after Matthew.
Yeah, it's between Matthew and Mark. It's Matthew saw Mark.
And Jesus went.
Well, hang on,
saw
maybe
the bear trap that was clasped around Judas's mouth.
Maybe it's the Book of John Kramer, Jigsaw. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's probably just going to be another Saw movie, except this time it's more focused on the detectives. But the thing is, a lot of the sequels were sort of certainly split narratives between the detectives trying to find these things out. So it's like it's not breaking any new ground. And from the way, obviously there was this excitement when it was first announced, and I think that teaser trailer that came out last year was like, oh, well, maybe it's going to be like 7. But also, it's like, well, I don't think it is. And I think it's going to be more like Saw 7, which has already happened. It was called Jigsaw. But I don't really understand what this is. I don't understand its unique hook because it just looks like another Saw movie to me.
What if I tried to convince you that...
Except they've put the pig head on the puppet this time. I guess.
The pig head's on everything. There's like 4 pig heads.
The pig head's a big thing of it.
Pause this trailer. That's a pig head. I remember that.
But yeah, I mean, who fucking knows?
But in the other ones, you didn't have Samuel L. Jackson in some kind of weird bear trap on all of his limbs.
Yeah, true. But you did have someone else in that bear trap.
You didn't have Chris Rock just shouting lines like a police officer, like, "How can I trust these people?"
You did have Donnie Wahlberg shouting those lines.
But that wasn't Chris Rock.
No, that's a good point. Chris Rock and Donnie Wahlberg are different people. I call him Chris Rock.
You did call him Chris Rock.
It's because I was gearing up for a Wahlberg. Yeah, I mean, this just looks like another Saw movie. I probably won't see it.
It's from the Book of Saw. It's not.
Okay,
it's
fine.
not a Saw. I see what you're saying, but
That's
you think it's a Saw movie. But even though there is a bit where Chris Rock is
That's like saying
chained
Black
to-
Widow from the Book of Marvel.
Maybe that's what they should be called.
It looks exactly like another Marvel movie, though.
Like, even though Chris Rock has his hand handcuffed to a radiator with a saw in his hand, like the first Saw, it's from the Book of Saw.
I don't think he's going to have to saw off his hand, by the way. I think he's going to have to saw off the pipe. Why didn't you think of that, dummies?
Don't they try?
Yeah, they definitely
saw through
tried
the
to in the first one.
handcuff, surely.
Yeah, I think that's the... Look, we're not here to get into
Well,
what...
first you have to get the saw from behind your eye.
That is true. It's buried behind your eye and you have to dig it out. Look,
So I can't wait for you
see
to
that.
see it and tell me how good it is. I won't be watching it.
Final trailer this week. 2 trailers, technically, for the same film. Because, hey,
Why not?
we needed 2 of them within the space of 7 days, I think.
Well, one
Ring style.
Saw style. Ring from the Book of Saw.
Not every horror property is from the Book of Saw. Stop trying to make the Book of Saw a thing. It was bad enough when Twisted Pictures or whatever it's called were trying to do it. Right, so the Suicide Squad. This is the James Gunn, I guess, reboot until they give us a better term for it.
It's not. It's a continuation.
Sorry, yes. I think it's actually the Suicide Squad from the Book of Saw.
But, so somebody actually tweeted at James Gunn saying, "Do you need to have watched David Ayer's Suicide Squad to understand this?" And he said no.
David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad.
No, the studio, massacre that is Suicide Squad.
These fat cats at City Hall not letting us see David Ayer's
Get
Suicide
out of here,
Squad.
Warner Brothers!
Yeah, so this had 2 trailers, one which was a red band and then one which was a edited one, which was a theatrical one, I think.
It was for the theatres, but then weirdly they went, it's a theatre exclusive, but then put it out in line.
Well, it was premiered a day earlier in theatres, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Because there was buzz about it online before they dropped it and saying the new Suicide Squad trailer is insane. And then everyone was like, but there isn't a new one. And then James Gunn went, from the Book of Saw, here comes the Suicide Squad. And this time they don't swear in the trailer.
So, this is his version of it. It's R-rated. It's some of the old characters are back, a lot of new characters, and they've got to go fighting in the jungle.
We've talked about it before,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I think the first trailer, the Red Band trailer, I didn't really like. I thought it had its moments. Like, I think there's a really nice kind of shot with like King Shark that's quite cinematic, and there's a couple of like lines in there that I'm like, okay, I like that. But it seemed like something that was trying too hard, and the flow was all wrong. I quite like the fact that Starro appears because why not? Like, it's very James Gunn to have that. The second trailer, the theatrical one, I really liked.
Okay.
I went, okay, this has more of a style to it. It seems like it has more. It's funnier than, trying to force red band lines into a trailer to show that, you're a bit edgy and you're a bit more adult. I think the second trailer actually felt more like a trailer and made me want to actually see this film. Like, the first one I was like, not that hard.
So will you demand the PG-13 cut of Suicide Squad?
Release the Warner Brothers cut. But
Oh man, there's going to be a lot of people on Twitter very angry at you. The first man who's ever been on Warner Brothers' side.
I don't know. I did say, I think on the live stream with Talk of You, but I prefer Justice League.
You did say you'd rather watch Justice League.
I'm not here to make friends. But yeah, the second trailer I think is a much better constructed trailer. And I think there's a very funny line by John Cena in there. I think it's the one where he's like, I love justice and I'll kill...
That's in the first one though as well, isn't it?
I don't think it is, no.
Oh, there's a variation on it then, because he said, I will kill an entire village if it means that I will be able to keep peace or something.
Yeah.
in the first trailer.
Something like that, but I like the way it's delivered
Okay.
in the second one. I like the one.
I think he's going to say it 10 times in the movie.
But yeah, so I think you're gonna.
I'm not
like
going to
this.
see this film is what's going to happen.
But that's cool.
But that's fine. I thought both of these trailers were very music video-y, in the same way that the trailers for the first Suicide Squad were very music video-y, and it did absolutely nothing to entice me, because I was like, well, I've been burned that time. I'm not going to get burned again. I also have this weird thing now where I feel like I'm now at my limit with sort of James Gunn-style snark being the... like, it feels like movies at the moment... There's certainly big tentpole superhero-y movies can be either one of two things. They can either be, a Marvel thing that's just fairly, you know what you're getting. It's by the numbers, but it gets the job done in the way that the people want it done. Or you get this Deadpool, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, feeling of like, oh, we're all a little bit on edge around here because...
A bit of a cookie.
Things aren't quite that normal around here, guys.
Yeah.
And I get that there's a lot of people out there who like that, but I feel like James Gunn has always been more successful doing that stuff without a budget. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he's done anything nearly as interesting as his early work in his last 10 years.
Isn't it like 15 years since like Super was released recently or something like that? It was anniversary like this week of Super being released, and it was something like 15 or something years, maybe more. But
2008, I think Super was.
But he talks about
maybe 13 years.
He talks about that film being like how they had no budget for that film and how he had to be kind of wily to make it. And actually, I think that works for that film. Like, I think Super is a really, really good film.
But if you look at things like Slither's a much better film than anything he's done since. And I'm just of the opinion that I think he's a director who really works better with restricted budgets, in the way that I think people who come from horror just understand that in order to be more creative, you have to have a restricted budget, because it then forces you into creative solutions to problems that are budgetary concern. So, I mean, look, this movie isn't for me. I'm appreciative of that. It's done absolutely nothing to entice me, so I've decided I will stay away from it.
I think...
And I'm sure for people who want this, it will be exactly what they want. And I'm sure for people who want the David Ayer cut, it won't be what they want.
My flip side to what you just said about James Gunn, though, is what I like about him is he's obviously somebody with a lot of love for a lot of history of the comics. Like, he loves kind of all this kind of weird stuff, and he's not afraid to put that on screen. And I kind of like that there is somebody who's there going, he doesn't seem just like a director plonked into a role to paint them by numbers. It seems like he does have the control and he does have a vision of what he wants to do with it.
Yeah.
And it's quite nice to have that on screen. But I do agree with what you're saying. I think when he is restricted, he does work well. But yeah.
Okay, reviews.
We'll get into some reviews.
Long old episode.
It's okay.
Okay, so do you want to do the TV stuff first?
Yes.
Okay, so
Harley Quinn is basically I don't want your future.
Yeah, so is it currently premiering its third series?
About to, yeah. I've only seen all of series 1.
So this is Harley Quinn. This is a DC thing that's premiered through... Oh, it's just moved to HBO Max in the States, actually. Yeah.
So I caught up with it because I'd heard good things about it. So this is Katie Cuoco as Harley Quinn, but it has like this incredible voice cast. I'm going to try and remember some names. Lake Bow, Alan Tudyk,
JB Smoove, Tony Hale, Ron Funches, Jason Alexander.
Some really great kind of voice work in here. And basically, it's Harley Quinn breaking off with the Joker, realising that he's kind of holding her back and wanting to be something bigger in Gotham, wanting to be kind of the top dog, and how she happens to do it. I think it's really funny. It's R-rated. It's very kind of gory, very sweary. But that kind of adds into the chaos of it all. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a series that is chaotic. Because it's animated, it means they can do some really kind of fun stuff with it. But it also doesn't... It's not afraid to kind of shine a light on like B-grade characters. Like Kite Man is a huge part of this series, which is a character that will never get play on a film. Like, you'll never see him in a film.
Yeah.
So it's allowing itself to kind of play with that kind of stuff. But actually, it's a story of kind of how Harley is getting over kind of heartbreak, but also forming some kind of kinship with Poison Ivy in a way that they are now just kind of two friends, which is something she hasn't had, which is actually really nice kind of undercurrent. Alan Tudyk is incredible as like so many roles, but his Clayface as this kind of like thespian actor is brilliant. And this is a series that gives us a really good King Shark as this kind of like techno geek kind of shark who is also, you know, a half man, half shark. Yeah, it's a lot of fun if you like any of the DC, like if you like DC stuff, but you don't mind something being a bit weird, a bit kooky, and a bit fun, and having fun with itself. This is definitely something to enjoy. I think the end of the first series is really good. Like even like musically and everything as well, what it uses is really strong, and maybe kind of just jump straight into series 2.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it.
Late 2021 according to the internet for the premiere of the third series.
Yeah.
So that will be coming out. Yeah, so that's now moved to HBO Max, it looks like. It was previously on DC Universe, which is apparently a network.
It was.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And it was announced that it was closing. Okay. Cool.
I think it all went to HBO afterwards.
Yeah. They've announced that the service will be relaunched as DC Universe Infinite, solely a digital comic subscription service.
Yes.
Oh, this is similar to the Marvel thing that you were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm looking forward to when that actually happens.
So it's going to be like a archive of basic you can then access for a subscription fee.
So the Marvel one is like, it was like $9.99, and they've got like 30,000 comics on there. But you can basically just read all the way back through the history of all their stuff.
Okay.
And I think DC are basically offering the same thing.
Cool. Right, so that is that.
The other TV thing.
Other TV thing. Invincible.
From the Book of Saw. Is on Amazon Prime.
That's actually what the Wikipedia page says.
Yeah, I just edited
last
it.
edited by Andy Hughes.
So Invincible is a series, another animated series about superheroes. This time it's a kid called Mark, who's voiced by Stephen Yeun. Basically, it's asked the question of, what would your life be like if your dad was Superman? And it goes from there, pretty much. And J.K. Simmons is in this as the dad, but it's also got, once again, a huge cast of really great voice actors.
Yeah.
And it's a series that basically goes, Mark gets these powers and has to grow up, like he's grown up knowing he's going to get powers at some point. And at the age of 18, he gets them. And how does that change his life? But it isn't just that. Instead, there's a whole story about, you know, a group of superheroes are murdered. And how did that happen? How did that come about? And what does that do to the rest of the world? And how do they deal with that? It's one of those that seems very much kind of like, its visual style is very much kind of Saturday morning cartoon. And I love it. Like, I think it's really well animated. I think it's a style of, like, a lot of new kind of cartoons and a lot of new animation is very much kind of Rick and Morty style. And that kind of, I think there's a term for that type of animation. And I think that's kind of the current trend of animation at the moment. Having something like this, which is, it almost seems like very kind of hand-drawn Saturday morning cartoons, it takes me back to a feeling of watching those kind of things when I was a kid. But then because it has, and it fills you with that sensibility for most of the first episode, and then at the end of the episode, it goes to a place where it does something with the story that you don't expect, and you get a real flavour for what this series is. The first 4 episodes are out on Amazon now, and the first 3 were up last week. The new one came this week, and it's great. Like, it's really solid stuff. Like, it was written by Robert Kirkman, who did The Walking Dead. So it's not afraid to kind of go to places that you wouldn't expect it to. I know there's some really good stuff in the future that I know of in the comics that, if it touches on, will be really kind of impactful, really interesting. But yeah, I think if you're looking for something superhero-y, a bit like The Boys on Amazon, where it's superheroes, but it's also a little bit off kilter at the same
We
time.
do things a little differently round here.
Yeah, and I think these are the kind of shows that are interesting to make now because we all know what a superhero show is. Mm-hmm. And we'll be going on to one in a minute of kind of like what our expectations are of a superhero show.
Completely forgot about that.
So doing something that isn't quite the norm
Yeah.
is great. And this Invincible, I think, does it really well. And I think it's really great having that many good performers in it.
How is Andrew Rannells of The Prom?
Who's he playing it?
He plays William Clockwell, Mark's best friend and confidant.
Oh, he's appeared in like a couple of scenes. I didn't realise that was Andrew Rannells.
Oscar winning from The Prom.
I like Andrew Rannells.
We think he's the best thing in The Prom. Which must mean he's good.
So Invincible's just gone up another notch now. Over it's him.
Well, now they got all the Rannells freaks on board.
They've got the Goggins in there.
Yeah, true. Okay, so that's that. Final segment for this week before we get on to movie reviews. We've done the news, thank God. We don't have enough time for that again. New segment, returning segment.
Yes.
Second time. I've got to work out how far away. Falcon! Watch! Okay, it's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier time.
So, talking about Invincible being something that is a little bit different to what you expect. Falcon and Winter Soldier is pretty much exactly as expected.
Okay.
So, I talked about the first episode being...
You said last time it was unexpected.
Doing stuff that I thought was more interesting.
Yes.
2 and 3 has gone very much into kind of, this is what I thought this series would be.
Sure.
And it is very Marvel. I think it at times touches on elements that I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, I think you did see the second episode where the Falcon Sam finds out that there's a superhero that is being hidden from the public. That means a lot to a lot of people.
Or would have meant a lot to a lot of people.
And I think when it touches on things like that, that's really interesting. It's really interesting seeing kind of what does this new Captain America look like and what would that mean for the world. Mm-hmm. But at times, it also is just bog standard Marvel.
Yes.
They've brought back Zemo, and it's very interesting to see what they're doing with his character. I like Daniel Bruhl, and I think his interaction with the other players in the series is very interesting. And I like that. But at times, while the writing for that is really good, some of the writing in this series is really bad.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because I think WandaVision was pretty solidly written the whole way through. In this, it seems like, I've seen people say, it seems like it's kind of the C story of a main film, but they're trying to flesh out. And I kind of understand that. I like what they're doing. And I like seeing these characters, but it does seem a bit rushed. Or a bit uneven at times, but it is great seeing, there are places that we see a location in this third episode that is a Marvel location that's completely fictitious, but we see it realized as this actual place, and it looks great. And it's great to see that kind of stuff. But then, the action's still great, but some of the writing in it is a bit kind of iffy and a bit all over the place. And it's also doing this thing where, I think they went from Thanos going, we like it with our villains, you could kind of agree with them.
Yeah. And
in this, you kind of agree with the villains. And then in the third episode, they do something to kind of be like, but you're meant to remember, these are the bad guys. Yeah. It's a bit uneven at the moment. I'm liking it enough, and it has those vibes of Winter Soldier and about it, where it's kind of like this bit of kind of griminess. But I kind of wish that what I got from that first episode continued. I think I just wanted a drama.
Okay.
Maybe a drama set about two guys just trying to readjust with reality.
Release the Hughes cut.
Release the Hughes cut. Release the Warner Brothers cut of Falcon and Winter Soldier. But yeah, it's halfway through.
It's only a 6-part series, this one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So.
A new character appears at the end of the third episode, or at least a returning character from previously in the Marvel Universe, who's really interesting to see kind of how that plays into it. Because it's when they appeared, I went, why are they here? Oh, I know why they're here. Which means things could get exciting. So by the time I next speak about it, we'll be, 5 episodes in. So we've just got the finale to go. So we'll see kind of where that leads us.
And we'll be doing a spoiler episode probably.
Maybe.
Well, I'm not going to be on it.
You've
so
not
it's
watched
gonna be
it, so
fine.
probably not.
Okay, so let's do some movie reviews. I'll run through a couple.
You got some stuff to talk
relatively
about.
quickly, yeah. So Slaxx, which is a Canadian horror comedy, which is available on Shudder currently. Certainly in the US, UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, and then everywhere else. Who knows? So this is a really sort of, I think, a pretty creative way of doing a relatively low budget movie based around the idea of killer genes. I would say, in terms of, I think it manages to create this sort of, it's set in this sort of very hippie kind of cool trendy clothing store that's about to have its launch of this new gene that makes you either look basically you buy these genes and they'll fit you no matter what your body shape is. They react to you, but there's something wrong with this batch that have come in overnight, and this launch might not go as well as you'd hoped. It's pretty gruesome. There's a lot of bloodshed. But for sort of a low budget horror movie, it gets the job done. I think it has fun with its premise. It's a film that's fully aware that it is a film about possessed genes. And that's kind of what you get from it. And I think there's some really creative stuff in it. And it gets the job done. It's there if you want. You'll know if you're in the mood for a horror comedy about killer genes, basically.
Which is the better killer clothing film, Slaxx or In Fabric?
In Fabric's a better film, but this is just this is never trying to do what In Fabric tried to do.
Yeah.
Whereas this is from its outset, this is a horror comedy in a much more comedic sense than it is a horrific sense. But yeah, it gets the job done. So that is available on Shudder now. Wherever you haven't got Shudder, I don't know what's happening with it, so sorry guys. Then also on Shudder this week is Violation, which is a sort of, it's a revenge thriller that's more about the trauma of living with an event and the sort of fallout of that than it. It's equally about that than as it is about the actual revenge edge of it. This is a really great film. I really like it. So it's written and directed by Madeline Sims Fewer and Dusty Mancinelli, and starring Madeline Sims Fewer in the central role. And I think so. She plays this woman who there's a horrific event that happens. And it plays out as two different timelines, sort of, it splits across those two different timelines. So one is the events running up to and involving that event. And then one timeline is then the repercussions, the fallout of that.
Okay.
I think it's one of the best examples of how to take a genre like the revenge thriller, and really do something quite inventive with it in terms of the way you approach it, and try and ground it in some degree of normalcy. And I appreciate we're talking about, surviving trauma and things like that. So normalcy depends on circumstance. So everyone's idea of normalcy will be different, but in a way that things like, I Spit on Your Grave was very much, I think it really felt like it was told from, particularly the remake, I feel was told from a very sort of male perspective of, oh, well, this, but also, we're telling it from the male gaze. So there's a lot of, what I think is really interesting about this film is that it approaches this subject that is horrifying to watch, and it's an uncomfortable watch, I'll give you that. And, if you want to watch it, you'll know you want to watch it, I think.
Yeah.
But this really is an uncomfortable watch, but it deals with it in a really, I think, a really smart and really accomplished way. It's up there with the best stuff I've seen this year so far, just because I think it approaches it in a way that doesn't feel like it's derivative of anything. It doesn't feel like it's trying to trade in on... It's never being dragged into the exploitative side of revenge thrillers. It is more interested in the emotional side effects and the journey of the victim in terms of what's... Yeah, just... I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give anything away. And I feel like there's a really great film here that needs to be seen, and it won't be seen by a huge amount of people. I think Shudder have done really well to pick this up and give it a platform. I think it's a film that really will now be able to reach a decent audience, particularly in these weird times where I think if it had been a normal cinematic release, it might have got released on a few cinemas, but you're probably not talking more than 25 cinemas in the UK or something. So I'm glad that it's got a relatively worldwide audience now.
Yeah.
I would really recommend people check this out
So
if
this is
they
on
are.
Shudder.
Yeah, so this is also on Shudder. It's called Violation. This is a would recommend. Slaxx, it's a that'll do pig.
Yeah.
Just remember that I didn't actually give you a rating on that one. But yeah, Violation is a would recommend. I really, really like this film. One more and then in fact, I'll just steamroll through the rest of mine and then we'll get on to the big one of the week. I just realised. So Wrong Turn. So this is the reboot of the Wrong Turn franchise, which began in 2003, maybe? I want to say, let's say 2003. 100% right, 2003. So Alan B. McElroy, who wrote the original Wrong Turn in 2003, has come back to write this, which is interesting in itself in that you kind of think, well, it's odd that you get the original writer coming back to reboot their series. It doesn't really happen. Why have you done this? And it turns out the reason why they've done this is because it changes quite fundamentally the entire series. So Wrong Turn was a series where the first one was released in cinemas and then none of the sequels were. They were all direct to DVD. And I think there's only one of the sequels that is worth any time, which is the one that I think it was number 2. It was directed by. No, I know who it was directed by, and I'm trying to remember his surname. It was Joe something, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But that one was the only one that was worth anything. The rest of them were all sort of exploitation trash. So Gone is this idea of there being hillbilly cannibals.
So that's what I was about to say. What is Wrong Turn?
So the original Wrong Turn was based on this kind of Appalachian nightmare of hillbilly inbred cannibals picking off these sort of millennial yuppies. I suppose they weren't millennial at that point. Yeah. They were whatever they were. But picking off these yuppies one by one and torturing them. And it was sort of around the same time that things like Cabin Fever had dropped.
Hills Have Eyes is like that, I think.
Yeah, so yeah, it borrowed a lot from The Hills Have Eyes.
I've seen that one.
Have you seen the remake, I'm guessing?
Maybe.
2006?
I saw one of them.
Have you seen one that was from the 1970s?
Probably not.
Yeah, you would remember if you'd have seen the first one, I think. So, yeah, it was around the same time as things like Cabin Fever, and then obviously Hostel came along afterwards, and Saw, and things like that. So it was in that... It's slightly a precursor to the torture porn, I would say.
Yeah.
But it kind of falls in that camp with some of the stuff it was trying to do.
What's the other term you use?
Gornography, which is a better term,
I like
actually. So what they've done here is they've gone, okay, well, we're going to keep the same setup roughly. So you've got this bunch of kids fresh out of college who are hiking the Appalachian Trail, and they arrive in town and they're told, oh, look, when you're hiking, just stay to the path. Make sure you don't go off the marked path, because it's very important that you don't do that, because these woods can be unforgiving. You can find all sorts of stuff here. They antagonize some of the locals, and then guess what? They walk off the path.
Of course.
And bad things start befalling them. Now, I think what they've done that is smart is got rid of that sort of hillbilly cannibal thing, because I don't think that worked in I think that was that actually ended up becoming the thing of that series, was that the three cannibal characters from the first film then became sort of, in the same way that Freddy or Jason becomes the protagonist of the latter series entries in their own franchises, those cannibals then became the stars of this. So what you've done here is you flipped it on its head and gone, well, actually, we're going to try and do a bit more with these characters, these young characters. And they're given some backstories that sort of explain what they're useful for and what their skills are. But essentially what you've done is they've managed to try and make something that is fundamentally quite different to the source material. And I think for the better. And I think it is a better made film, therefore, than even the first one of those Wrong Turn original series. And I think it kind of, if you're looking for something that is going to give you, okay, it's not groundbreaking, it's not revolutionary, but you're probably going to have an okay time with it. It doesn't really overstay its welcome. I think it's fine. I think it's a that'll do pig, but it's interesting that you've come back to this franchise and clearly the writer has gone, I want to do this again, because it no longer works in that same way. And I think genuinely, if it was a case of they tried to make that same film again, beat for beat, it wouldn't work. I think it's very much a product of the early 2000s, and I don't think you can really do that again. So they've tried to make it for a 2021 audience, and it kind of gets the job done. It's nothing groundbreaking, and I would say if you're interested in it, if you're looking for the stuff that was in the first series, you're not going to find it here. So if you're someone who's a fan of that original series who really wants to see that kind of thing again, you're not going to get it. Yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing, is you're trying to subvert the expectations of maybe the only people who will be interested in seeing the seventh Wrong Turn movie. But yeah, so that's available to rent on streaming services currently now. First one to get a cinematic release since that first one. It got a one-day release in cinemas in the US.
Once it's eligible for Oscars, that's why.
Maybe. I'll have to check and see if it is. I mean, I'm not going to give it any potential nominees, but whatever. So, moving on. Documentary called Assassins, which came out at the beginning of the year, and then I've caught up with now. It's on Sky Cinema. So this is a film that sort of follows I think it was 2017, the assassination of Kim Jong-un's half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, which took place in an airport in Malaysia. Really fascinating story. These two women were sort of recruited to... So they thought what they were doing was they were taking part in a game show, a prank show.
Yes.
And they were approached by a group of guys and they did some pranks and, it all sort of built up into... And then their last prank is this thing in an airport where they go up behind people and they put their hands over their eyes, like a sort of Guess Who game or whatever. But their target in the final episode that they were shooting was Kim Jong-nam, and they, completely unbeknownst to them, who he actually was. And it's kind of an interesting story in that he'd been sort of sidelined when Kim Jong-il passed away and was seen as not being a suitable successor to him. And Kim Jong-un came to power, and there are various arguments about whether he or the people around him were aware that he was potentially someone who could upset the apple cart, who maybe held a few friends in still relatively high places within the North Korean regime. And it's really fascinating watching this thing and just seeing this evolution of this story. It's bizarre. It's one of those stories where you're going, I cannot believe that this is real. Yeah. And it's kind of it's a really interesting story about these women who are taken advantage of from a point of view of, oh, well, it looks less suspicious if we're trying to frame this as this, prank show thing, and that's our angle into it, and this is how we're going to pull it off. But also, that idea of using these people as pawns rather than as human beings, and I think it's a really interesting documentary. So it's available on Sky Cinema. I would recommend. I think it's a really interesting watch. Finally, before we get on to the major thing of this week, The Night.
We're really making you wait this week, guys.
So The Night is a psychological horror directed by Kura Shahari, and so it's number one. I'll tell you this now. It's in Farsi, so if you like your Iranian horror movies, you're gonna like this.
I think we all know where this one's going on Alex's list.
Look, I like it. I'll tell you this now. So it's an Iranian couple who have their young child with them, sort of, not even a toddler, a baby, really. Mm-hmm. And they, for circumstances, they have to book into a hotel. And they book into this hotel, and they are then plagued throughout the night with apparitions, hallucinations. Maybe they're real, maybe they're not. And it's a film that sort of leans into it definitely, there is definitely something of The Shining about some of it. Mm-hmm. I think, the hotel setting is part of that, but it's also about confronting the demons of your past. It's about sort of owning your own legacy and what you've done in your life.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, it kind of works in a way that I didn't necessarily know it was going to. It's a stripped down movie, it's not a huge cast, but it's atmospheric in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be, and really gives off it's a very eerie movie for a lot of the runtime. And I think it works. The sort of twist there's a couple of conventional tropes that are thrown in there that you kind of, I don't know if there's a way to do it where they don't necessarily exist in this, but I think for the most part they still work. But the twists and the turns work well enough, and I think there is some really good visual storytelling in here. I really like this film. I mean, I don't think it's not up there with my top stuff of the year at the moment, but I do. It's in the top stuff of the year, but it's not mixing it with, say, Minari, which is out this week, by the way, and people should check it out. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think from another first time director, I believe it's just I think it's really
all of the Alex Hudson bingo cards. Farsi, it's first time director. Minimalist in top films of the year.
I think it's really accomplished, and I think it gets the job done. If you want a film that's gonna fill you with sort of eerie dread, I think it's this film. I think it does really well. So it's called The Night. It's available to rent on streaming platforms now, and I'd recommend you do it. I would recommend it. It's good. I like this. Of course, I like this. Of course you do. It's right up my alley.
Like, they've got a picture of you on that drawing board. Like, it's not often you get your own drawing board, but they found one.
It's good. Okay, it's good.
Of course, there's one for you.
Godzilla vs. Kong.
I'm really glad, but I was going to watch something new last night, and I decided not to. I was like, oh no, I'm just going to carry on playing Final Fantasy until the early hours.
How's Final Fantasy?
Having a great time.
Final Fantasy 10.
We haven't got time for this.
Okay.
But yeah, decided not to watch something, which is good, because it means that finally we can talk about
Godzilla vs.
Kong.
Why don't you speak for a bit?
A film where basically, so this is a sequel to Godzilla King of the Monsters. And also technically Kong Skull Island. It's like the fourth film in the MonsterVerse, where basically they need to get Godzilla to go to the Hollow Earth, which definitely exists in this universe.
Yeah.
Because they need to get some kind of power from this. But Godzilla is also out there, and he's doing bad things. He's killing people and destroying things. But also, if he realizes Kong's out, he's going to have to fight Kong because
they're both
nature.
apex.
Yeah, you can't have two apex predators. So
a lot of apex predators in cinema. Cheetah from Wonder Woman 84.
Godzilla, Kong. Yeah. Cheetah was also there, and she died very quickly.
This is the same universe from the book of Wonder Woman.
But yes, so then Godzilla finds Kong and
Yes.
punches off Throne, and then they find more reasons for them to fight. At the same time, a lot of human nonsense is going on that also doesn't really affect anything. Is that pretty much...
Yeah, pretty much. I
lot of
think
returning
you've
cast.
covered it, yeah.
A lot of returning cast from the previous ones.
Is there?
Yeah, like Millie Bobby Brown's in it.
Millie Bobby
Ron
Brown.
Livingston.
Kyle Chandler, not Ron Livingston.
Same person in my head.
Okay.
Like
What
literally,
other returning cast
in my
members
head,
are
they
there?
are the same person.
So that's it.
Yeah, that might be it.
Lot of returning
Godzilla.
cast too. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Kong.
Godzilla and Kong as themselves.
Yeah,
Skull
all of them.
crawlers.
All of them coming back.
Uh,
Like I said, a lot of returning characters.
yeah,
from the
yeah,
previous
you were right. A lot of them are returning.
But a lot of new characters as well, guys.
Arguably, more new characters than old.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of extras.
But in terms of size, obviously Godzilla and Kong biggest.
Yeah.
So
But you got like
they outweigh new characters.
Eliza Gonzalez.
Isaac Gonzalez, Damien Bashir, Lance Reddick for about a minute.
Is he?
Julian Dennison,
Where's Lance Reddick?
Shonaguri. He is the Monarch executive. So when they get to, spoiler alert, Hong Kong, not that that's a spoiler alert.
There's a picture of it in the posters.
Okay, well then we're fine. Yeah, when he gets to Hong Kong, Kyle Chandler meets up with him and he's like, they're destroying the city. It's like, yeah, no shit,
Why
mate.
get Lance Reddick for that role?
Lance Reddick likes to work.
So yeah, it's a film about two monsters punching for a bit. So where I fall on this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a film that I was really excited for because I love big monster movies. But I also thought Godzilla King of the Monsters is real trash. And we watched it again before this, and it's still real trash.
I can't wait for people to listen to our episode next week where we discuss the Monsterverse in full. It'll be shorter than this episode.
But I think, for me, I think a lot of the human stuff is really bad in this film. Like, the whole Millie Bobby Brown side story about her meeting a podcaster to save the world.
We love a film where a podcaster is in it.
I'm glad that we're finally getting our dues. I think that's...
I'm annoyed that they didn't cast us.
Every time it goes back to that side story,
Yeah.
the film slows and is awful.
Yeah.
And I just want to be past that. The other side story of the other humans, I didn't mind as much because I think Rebecca Hall is really good in this, as is... I don't know the name of the child actor. You might have it there.
Let me bring that up now because that is important.
Yeah, I think she's the best part of this film.
Give me 2 seconds. Sorry, why is this taking? Oh, that's why they've listed it right at the end. Oh no, hang on. Why have they not even listed? Kaylee Hottle. Yes.
So Katie Hottle plays a deaf child who forms a bond with Kong. And basically is able to communicate with him. And it's important that, she is deaf herself from a deaf community, and she plays this role in a really expressive way. And I think she is the most interesting part of this film.
Yeah.
But then you've also got, like, another side story of other humans doing shady things in the background, but also that company also making people go to the Hollow Earth, and all of this human stuff is just really boring, and I just really want to get to the monsters fighting. And when I get there, I have a world full of fun. Like the first fight scene that's in the trailer between Godzilla and Kong, which is them and a load of navy boats, and it's at sea, is great. I had so much fun. I was smiling during the whole thing, and then they find a reason for them to come back together again at the end and fight again, and that stuff is great. There's a part of me that's really upset that I didn't get to see this in the cinemas, because those kind of fights are incredibly cinematic. They are huge scale, and the cinema experience is where you should be appreciating that. And there's some really inventive stuff in there of the way that Kong fights in comparison to Godzilla, and how he can hold his own in that sort of thing. Because Godzilla is this crazy, like, wrecking ball of force. I think there are problems in that, and I think there are problems and things to probably discuss about kind of how often Godzilla can use its radioactive breath, for example, because it's different to kind of how it's previously been told to us. But if I'm looking at this as a film where I go, did I have fun? Because the monsters punched each other for a bit, and was that exciting? Yes, it was. I had fun with it. And actually, last night I went, and instead of watching a new film, I just watched the fight sequences of this film again. Because I enjoyed them. And would I go back to this film again? Probably would at some point. Like, I had fun. It's not the best film of the year, but I had fun. And I think that's what I came into it hoping for. Would I come out of it going, is there a fun time to be had in there somewhere? Yes. And I realise it's not fun for everyone. I realise, like, for example, this film ain't made for you. There's literally zero farsi in this film. I checked. But yeah, you say why you think it's bad.
Well, look, okay, so number one, yeah, you're right. You know, the human stuff is, it is expositionary at best. You know, these are not, other than Kaylee Hartle, who I think is by far the best thing in this film, the only really redeeming quality of the cast, as it were. I don't count Kong and Godzilla in the cast, don't worry. I do. But yeah, I mean, I think she's terrific. And it's a shame that there isn't more of a thing for her to do here, because I think her interactions are the best thing about the film. From a sort of script point of view, it is all over the place. And I think when you've got a story done by 3 people and then the screenplay then adapted from that by 2 other people, you're never probably going to get a real clean idea of how you're going to construct this. And there are too many threads trying to go on, which are completely unnecessary. Give me an intertitle card that just says, a baddie is doing this thing because of this.
Well, for example, the Carl Chandler stuff doesn't need to be there, because he does nothing in this film. By proxy, the Millie Bobby Brown stuff, what does that actually teach you? Like, you could do that in a different way. You didn't need that in there at all. That's already 2 side stories gone.
Yeah.
You're already minimalising kind of the amount of faff you need to do in this film, because there's a lot of faff. Yeah.
Look, this is so I'll probably get into this in more detail next week on the episode where we're discussing the whole Monsterverse. But the problem for me is, this is a film that lacks any personality. Even when you get to the fights, I feel they are pretty bland in terms of their approach. Now, what I'd say is, it's better than Godzilla King of the Monsters, because there was too much fighting. And the fights, because they just kind of went from scene to scene, from fight to fight, it felt so repetitive. Whereas this one has, I guess, 3 or 4 main fights that happen within it, and that kind of works better. But hey, who knew that you didn't need to have 5 different monsters in a movie to all battle each other? I mean, the problem that I have with it still boils down to the fact that I think, okay, yes, if you'd have put this on the cinema screen and I was watching it on the cinema screen, I think I would have got a hell of a lot more out of those fight scenes than I did in this version. And I would be relatively interested to just see the fight scenes within their own context on the big screen. I won't do it when it opens there, because
you have to all that other
I've got to sit through the whole fucking film again, and I'm not going to do that. So...
Well, it helps. I think it starts about 36 minutes in as the first fight, so you can turn up to it late. So,
yeah, I mean, that, I think from that stuff, it just feels like there's no... What I really... This is more stuff for next week. What do you mean? Well, no, because I'll get into this in proper detail next week. But fundamentally, I think that Godzilla from 2014 and Kong Skull Island work in ways that the 2 follow-ups haven't, for a couple of reasons. One, I think the fact that there is less going on in terms of the monster fights is better. 2 is that they both have distinct personalities in terms of what film they are trying to be. The next 2 have devolved into relatively bland punch-ups, which is I think, if you're here for a monster punch-up, you do get those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're, I would rather watch the monster punch-ups from Godzilla 2014 or from Kong Skull Island, because I think they are done better. I think they're orchestrated better in those films. However, I can appreciate that for some people, they will be going into this going, I don't care about any of the other stuff surrounding it. Mm. I just want to get to those scenes, in which case, watch the supercut that you're going to release. And I think those scenes work well enough, but I was never blown away by them.
Yeah.
And I think 90% of that is because it's on the small screen. And I don't think these films are films that travel particularly well from an IMAX thing down to even a large TV.
Yeah.
Doesn't really do them the justice they need to have done. And my problem is, if those aren't grabbing me in the same way that they would in the cinema, then I am just bored by it.
Yeah, and I agree in a way that it does lose something from that thing. And I do think that these films are pretty much always weighed down by the fact that this need to have human characters in there that do human things, that tie the whole thing together. And that's always the least interesting part. And it makes me go, can you kind of shave parts off that to make us just get to the interesting stuff more often?
Yeah, but what's interesting is this is the shortest one of these four.
I do think that this film is inventive in the way that those fights are constructed. There are stuff that happen in there that they use because they can use it with the characters they've got. They've shown that Kong is a smart aggressor sort of thing. Like he's able to use tools, but he's also able to kind of use his environment in different ways and putting him into different places. There are things that he does in that fight scene, and watching it again, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that. That's pretty cool. For me, I completely agree with you. Like, I think there is a better film that could have been made here. I think, focusing on maybe the characters that are interesting and finding a different way to get them together.
Well, I think that... So the interesting thing is that I think that Adam Wingard works best when he's working with Simon Barrett, who wrote You're Next and The Guest, right? I think without him, he really feels like he's someone who doesn't really have a voice of his own. So as a director here, he's trying to direct something that's been written by a bunch of different people, including the director of the last movie.
Yeah.
And then not able to put his own voice into it, because I actually think his voice is Simon Barrett's voice rather than his. And I think that's fundamentally a problem with Adam Wingard, is that I think if you separate him from Simon Barrett, he's completely ineffectual in terms of trying to create any sense of personality.
And I suppose the difference is, especially, I think the main one you look at here is Skull Island. Jordan Vogt Roberts has his stamp all over that film.
Yeah.
And that film is probably my favourite of the four.
But also, if you look at Gareth Edwards' work on Godzilla, Gareth Edwards is someone who fundamentally understands monster movies. Monsters is the best monster movie of the last 50 years. And yet, because of the fact that he understands how to do that, it sets such a high bar for the franchise that is continued by Jordan Vogt Roberts, because he goes, I want to make Cannibal Holocaust, I want to make Apocalypse Now, but have Kong in it. Both of those work because they're completely separate movies that have very different sensibilities, but both know what those sensibilities are. These last two, for me, have just felt like they are completely just interchange. This is better than the last one, I'll give you that, because the last one is god-awful. King of the Monsters is one of the worst films I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm there thinking, okay, yes, fine, your human characters here are very expensive and well-paid set dressing, and that's about it. I actually cared about some of the human dynamics in the first two. And yeah, sure, it's easier to do that when you haven't got Kong in it, but you've still got other monsters in it. It's not like you've got just one monster going around being taken down by humans. They've all got other monsters in them, but they managed to do more with it. And look, maybe I'm bringing too much into this and expecting them to have some degree of personality, but that's the problem for me, is that if I'm expecting that, it's because you've set the bar high.
Yeah.
Those first two are really good. And I'm disappointed because I know that there is the potential to make these movies the movies I want them to be, because they've made 2 of them. Mm-hmm. But I'll never get that again. I know that.
They won't take that risk. Like, it's written by committee for a reason, because this film has to be what it is. It has to be this kind of by committee monster fighting movie that will make lots of money. And that's what it is. They're not going to take a risk on, Skull Island. They could afford to take that risk. Like, he obviously went in with his vision, went, this is what I want to do. And he went, yeah, fine, it's a Kong movie, but when they get together,
I'm pretty sure the other movies were all written by committee as well, weren't they?
Maybe.
Kong Skull Island had 3 different writers on it, none of which were Jordan Vogt Roberts. Max Borenstein, who was also one of the writers on that, was the sole writer on Godzilla. It comes from the director's sensibilities, I think, in terms of being able to instill some kind of personality. Yeah. And I think fundamentally my problem is that I've found that, like, I couldn't understand the Michael Dougherty link, because I think Michael Dougherty is a great horror director. He knows how to direct horror and horror comedy really well. And yet Godzilla King of the Monsters is just a complete mismatch, and I don't think he works in that function. And likewise, I think Adam Wingard's someone who can do well with, he's someone who specializes in very gruesome, you watch Your Next and it is bloody as all hell. But he's given a really sharp script in that he just isn't here. And I think that's just part of the problem, is that I think you're matching directors with projects that they fundamentally don't vibe with, I don't think.
Yeah.
And
Well, there are directors who can do big budget action films.
Yeah, but who'd have thought that Jordan Vogt Roberts, who directed Kings of Summer, was going to direct a Kong movie and do it really well? You wouldn't have put those together, and yet somehow they really work.
That's why you got to take the risk. Maybe Adam Wingard could be the next one.
Okay, but you just said they can't take that risk anymore.
No, and I think this has.
I don't think this was a risk. This was 2 monsters who've got big audiences fighting.
This is a film that had to make money. It had to be big. And the thing is, Adam Wingard, for me, he's probably a director. They went, we could probably put him in and tell him what we want. Like, that's what this is. For me, this film, I had more fun with this than most films I've seen this year. Because at least it's exciting. Like, I had a lot of fun with it. I realise it's not the best film. And I'm very aware it's not the best film. I'm very aware there are a lot of bad elements to it. But did I have fun? Yeah, I had fun. And that's what I needed. I needed a film that allowed me to have fun. And that's what I got. And for me, that works.
So your recommendation?
Yeah, fine. Fucking watch it. It's great.
That'll do, Pig. I think if you want the monster movie, it's there. I would always recommend the other 2 above it.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I am not saying watch this above those 2. But, like, at the moment, we probably need a film like this that is, like, it's just a bit of nonsense. Like, and it is big budget, kind of overblown. Okay, yeah, that's fine. But I recommend it because I think there are moments of fun. And I'm probably more recommending it from my point of view. Like, would I recommend it? Yes, I would.
I'm trying to look at it as...
Would I recommend it to you? No.
But I'm trying to look at it as well from that point of view of... We always say this. You look at it with caveats, and you look at it from, does it deliver on the promise of the premise? I think it mostly does. But I don't think it's successful in it all the time. And I think the stuff that doesn't work about it detracts too much from the stuff that does work about it for me. So I'm looking at it from the point of view of, is this a monster movie where monsters punch each other? Yes. Is it the best example of that? Nowhere near. Where would I put it? That'll do, Pig.
My point of view is, for years to come, will I end up just watching those scenes that I watched last night? Probably. I will probably watch those 3 or 4 more times this year. So in that point of view, I think that bit is fun, and that is a great watch. And I would, and I know that you won't, I would sit through the rest of that film when it comes out in the cinemas to watch those scenes on the big screen again.
Okay.
So for me, Yes.
Remember this, guys? The big blow up of 2021. Hudson versus Hughes.
We did it.
One will fall.
I hope it was all worth waiting for, guys.
Sorry, I'm just going to edit out the first 45 minutes. As always, you can find us on Facebook, iTunes, Buzzsprout, whatever. Look, find us where you get podcasts. You know what we're called. Find us on Twitter at DinosaurMan15. We're also on Twitch at twitch.tv/DinosaurManPod.
Yes.
Andy is currently twitching, I guess. No, he's not twitching Final Fantasy.
No, I decided that people probably don't want to see that.
Okay, so you're twitching Yakuza and
Jurassic World Evolution.
I'm not. I did one Twitch and it was bad, and we'll never go back to it again.
Johnny Neves did the theme song as ever. This time it was just two monsters roaring at each other.
You were the host.
Alex, you were also the host.
And you did the best job.
Until next time, guys.
Well, fuck me, I guess. I said you did the best job, and you said nothing.
Yeah, you did.
You didn't even say thank you.
You did an awful job.
You know what? I'm firing you.
You know what? I think we're going to have to fight in Hong Kong.
Fucking unbelievable. All right, guys. See you next week.
Boy.
Dawn